Starting off this countdown, we have Hotel Room 333. The Langham Hotel is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in London, and Room 333 is why it has this reputation. So the hotel was first built in 1865. There are over 500 rooms and suites, and also a number of ghosts as well. There are at least 5 ghosts that make their presence known on the regular, but several other ghosts haunt the hotel as well. The most active ghost is said to be that of a German prince. It's believed that he threw himself out of a window on the upper story room and he passed away. Well, guests have seen this ghost on a number of occasions. He is known to move through walls and close doors. If you feel a sudden drop in temperature, it's said that that's a sign he is near. Then you also have the ghost of a man with a gaping wound on his face. They don't know what happened to him, but they know that he's terrifying looking. And you have the ghost of a butler that has been seen wandering the corridors in ripped socks. And a ghost of a man in a pale blue suit with a powdered wig on. But let's get to the most haunted room, Room 333. People who have stayed in this room have encountered a number of terrifying ghosts. The first sighting was made by a BBC newscaster. He was staying in the room when he woke up to see a fluorescent ball of light floating above him. This ball slowly transformed into a human apparition. The apparition then hovered in his room. He was dressed in Victorian evening wear, but one of his legs was missing. He came towards the newscaster with his arms open and eyes wide before disappearing into thin air. Maybe the poor dude just wanted a hug, you know? He's coming out like, I don't know. Another ghost that haunts this room is the ghost of a doctor who took the life of his wife on their honeymoon. This guy often appears wearing a cloak and often has blank staring eyes. And lastly, we have Emperor Napoleon III. Apparently he lived at the Langham Hotel during his last days in exile and has also made an appearance in Room 333. In our 4th spot today we have Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden is a well-known individual in American criminal history. If you don't know who she is, well hey, here's a quick little nursery rhyme that'll teach you all about her. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That's a sick nursery rhyme based on the real murder Lizzie Borden committed. But it turns out she only struck her mom 19 times and her dad 10 times. I mean, it's still bad, but anyways, back in 1892 her parents were found dead. After investigating the scene, Lizzie was the only person who seemed guilty, although her case is pretty controversial. Some say she did it, others say she didn't. Anyways, the Borden murder house is now a bed and breakfast museum, in case you want to stay in a real place where gruesome murders happened. And turns out that Lizzie, as well as others, haunt the grounds. Late at night, apparently she could be heard laughing at the top of the stairs. Others have seen doors open and close on their own. Or they'll just be chilling out, minding their own business, when all of a sudden they get a whiff of Lizzie's perfume. On top of that, others have heard the traumatized maid screaming for help. And others have seen her parents walking the grounds.
In at number 3 we have Bell Witch Farm in Tennessee. In the early 1800s, John Bell bought a tract of farmland along Tennessee's Red River. Bell and his family thrived on the farm until they started to see strange looking animals around the property, most notably a dog with a rabbit's head. From that point on, the family was beset upon by unseen forces, largely targeted at Bell and his daughter Betsy. They experienced physical attacks, heard unexplained noises, and even spoke with the entity. What was the Bell Witch? Like most supernatural stories, certain details vary from version to version, but the prevailing account is that the Bell Witch claimed to be the spirit of Kate Batts, a mean old neighbor of John Bell who believed she was cheated by him in a land purchase. On her deathbed, she swore that she would haunt John Bell and his descendants. The human interactions with the spirits date all the way back to 1817. Former President Andrew Jackson was quoted as saying, "I had rather face the entire British army than to spend another night with the Bell Witch," after he and some of his troops spent a night at the Bell's farm. Over time, so many people traveled great distances to visit the Bell's home that it had to eventually be torn down for safety purposes in the latter part of the 1800s. The historic Bell Witch Cave has preserved some of the artifacts from the original cabin, such as a chimney stone and an iron kettle. You can see these articles along with some other artifacts, news articles and photos from the time John Bell and his family resided on the farm when touring the reconstructed Bell cabin. If you're interested in paranormal activity, or if you're a history buff, then the Bell Witch Cave and farm will definitely not disappoint. In at number 2 we have Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca. The small Iowa town of Villisca doesn't have much to offer tourists except for a night of terror at the Villisca Axe Murder House. Back in 1912, the whitewood framed house was the site of a horrifying crime that left an entire family dead by axe. Shortly after midnight on June 10, 1912, a stranger hefting an axe lifted the latch on the back door of a 2-story timber house in the little Iowa town of Villisca. The door was not locked. Crime was not something you worried about in a modestly prosperous Midwest settlement of no more than 2,000 people. The visitor was able to slip inside silently and close the door behind him. Still carrying the axe, the stranger walked past one room in which 2 girls lay sleeping and slipped up the narrow wooden stairs that led to 2 other bedrooms. He ignored one in which 4 more children were sleeping. He crept into the room in which 43-year-old Joe Moore lay next to his wife Sarah, raising the axe high above his head so high it gouged the ceiling. The man brought the flat of the blade down onto Joe. Then he struck Sarah before she had time to wake or register his presence. Leaving the couple, the killer went next door and used the axe on the other residents in the room. Once again, there is no evidence that they woke before they died, nor did the assailant or any of the other people in the home make sufficient noise to disturb Catherine's 2 friends, Lena and Ines Stillinger, as they slept downstairs. The killer then descended the stairs and took the lives of the Stillinger girls. What happened next marked the Villisca killings as truly peculiar and still sends shivers down the spine a century after the fact. The axeman went back upstairs and beheaded everyone in the home, leaving the faces of all 6 members of the family unrecognizable. The Moores were not discovered until several hours later. When neighbors didn't see the family wake in the morning, they called for Villisca's marshal, Hank Horton. That set in train a sequence of events that destroyed what little hope there may have been of gathering useful evidence from the crime scene. When a shaken doctor emerged, he cautioned members of the growing crowd outside, "Don't go in there, boys, you'll regret it until the last day of your life." Many ignored the advice, as many as 100 curious neighbors and townspeople tramped as they flew through the house scattering fingerprints. It is probably due to this damage to the crime scene along with the lack of knowledge on such large crimes that the killer was never found. It could have been one of the noisy neighbors or someone passing through time, but no one will ever know. What we do know is that there have been sightings of the family's spirits since, and the house continues to be a main attraction for dark tourism. And finally, in at number 1 we have House of Danger in New York. New York's Greenwich Village has some of the most desirable real estate in the world, except for this house on West 10th Street, known as the House of Danger. The townhouse is said to be haunted by the ghosts of 22 people who lived or died within its walls, including the tragic story of a girl who was killed by her adopted father. Being New York City, however, the house has a celebrity pedigree too. Said that author Mark Twain stayed in the house back in 1900 and returned for the occasional visit. The house seems to have started earning its reputation gradually after the Borman family stopped living there. The first recorded incident of bad luck happened in 1897. Cycling celebrity Fred Andrew, the new owner and occupier of 14 West 10th Street, had a moment of bad luck. During his residency, as described in the New York Times, of August 9, 1897, Andrew had a moment of reckless bicycle riding that caused him to hit a person. The person suffered a broken leg and Andrew was subsequently arrested. Jan Bryant Bartle and her daughter took up residency of a spacious apartment on the top floor in 1957. Bartle reported almost immediately that a monstrous moving shadow would often follow her around the home. One time she writes that she had seen a ghostly figure of a man standing in a hall. Bravely, she reached out and tried to touch whatever she was seeing. She felt something, but nothing like she had felt before. She described it as a substance without substance, chilly and damp. Bartle was a true believer and took the proactive step of employing a paranormal expert to investigate what could be causing these terrifying realities for the scared residents. The investigator confirmed what the couple had believed from the start. The investigator said that they were upward of 22 spirits at the House of Danger. Besides Mark Twain, he mentioned additionally a woman in a white dress, a young girl, and a grey cat. On November 2nd, 1987, New York City witnessed a genuine tragedy at the House of Danger. The passing of Lisa Nussbaum was so horrific it caught everyone's attention. Around 6:40 a.m., 911 operators got a pressing phone call from children's author and editor Hedda Nussbaum. She said that her daughter Lisa wasn't breathing, so an ambulance was sent to Greenwich residents right away. When the paramedics arrived, they were greeted by a very disturbing scene. They found Lisa unresponsive on the kitchen floor and her brother Mitchell tied up in the home. Paramedics were regrettably unable to revive Lisa on their way to the hospital. Later, her autopsy revealed the cause of death was repeated blunt force trauma. Hedda and Joel were both arrested and subsequently charged with first-degree murder. Currently in private ownership, the building is resided in today and continues to add stories of hauntings to the legends of paranormal activity in the House of Death. The stairwell continues to be the nexus of the ghostly activity in the building. The dark and wide antique stairs are where many of the ghosts still make their appearances.
Number 5 on this list is LA's Black Dahlia Murder House. Yep, just another murder house on the list of homes that you can buy. Top 10 Real Estate Deal says, tales of terror and tragedy rarely last as long as one of the most notorious Hollywood mysteries of the last century, the Black Dahlia murders. Rumors still abound about the home's previous owner, Los Angeles doctor George Hodel, and his involvement in the brutal killing, mutilation, and dismemberment of Elizabeth Short. Elizabeth was sliced in half at her waist and all the blood drained from her body. It looked like the work of a skilled surgeon. The house, an unusual piece of architecture crafted by Lloyd Wright, looks like it is cut straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. While a $2 million renovation has brought the house back to its original splendor, one can still feel that they should be running for their life through the house while being chased by Dr. Hodel. The house was recently on the market at $4.7 million and has been the backdrop for multiple Hollywood movies, TV shows such as Ghost Hunters and Paranormal America, and even an American Express commercial. Sliced in half, guys. Like, not just cut a little bit, literally sliced in half. You woke up as one person and now you are two pieces of that one person. Yeah, that's an absolute no from me. This was a horrible killing and one that has left its dark mark on the home and made it very haunted. I don't care how much you try to renovate this place or anything like that, nothing will ever be able to get out the spirit that lingers. Elizabeth will not leave, and frankly, if I was sliced in half, I'd be pretty pissed about the whole ordeal as well. She takes her anger out on those that come here. The people that live here talk about her quite frequently. And maybe the craziest part about this is that that's a selling point. This home is going for almost $5 million even though someone was literally sliced in half and their ghost now runs rampant through the home. $5 million is a lot of money, and spending all of it to get harassed by a ghost torso? Yeah, doesn't seem like the best investment. Number 4 on this list is the Gardet Le Pretre Haunted Mansion. Mansions are cool. I would love to own one. The second you throw the word haunted in front of the word mansion, though, I am no longer interested. Top 10 Real Estate Deals says the Gardet Le Pretre Mansion, or more locally referred to as the Sultan's House, has been photographed and heralded in articles from the time it was built in the 1830s. Having hosted the cream of New Orleans society from the beginning of its rich history, the home comes with a scary story. One morning, as neighbors were walking by the Sultan House, they saw blood trickling from under the front door. The police were notified and had to break into the house, only to find that all inhabitants had been murdered with swords or axes, and the Sultan was found brutalized and buried alive in the backyard. It was always felt that the murders were executed by his brother, the real Sultan, as retribution for the theft of his fortune and many of his wives. How much is local lore and how much is true, we will never know for sure. This is, after all, New Orleans. Only a block from Bourbon Street, the French Quarter-style home with 9 bedrooms and 10 baths most recently was on the market at $2.65 million. We are talking about a place that has had multiple murders go down. Like, literally a full-on massacre happened here, and people want to spend over $2 million on it? How do we know that there isn't more dead bodies hidden somewhere in the house? Like, under the floorboards or deeper in the backyard? This home is deeply haunted, and I want no part of it.
In our third spot, we have the Banff Springs Hotel. There's one room in this hotel that was so scary and plagued with paranormal activity that they no longer let anyone in that room, and it has since been boarded up. So Banff Springs Hotel is considered a luxury mountain resort located in Canada. Seems kind of odd that it's terribly haunted, but it is. So according to a number of legends, the hotel is haunted by its tragic past. Decades ago, a family was killed in room 873. In 1928, a married couple and their daughter checked into the hotel, but they never checked out. During one night, the father ended up taking the lives of his wife and daughter before taking his own life. No one knows why he did such a horrific deed. Soon after, the room was refurbished and booked out to visitors. But weird things started happening in that room. Guests would wake up in the middle of the night to sounds of screaming. When they would flip on the lights, they would see bloody handprints on the mirror inside their room. Obviously, they they would freak the hell out and then run to the front desk. But when the staff went to the room to investigate, the prints would be gone. It was happening so frequently that they decided to board up the room. In fact, if you go to the hotel today, there are rooms ending in 73 on each floor except the 8th floor. In the spot that the room should be, you can tell that a room was once there but has since been boarded up. There are lights placed above each doorway, and there is one above where this missing door would have been. Not only that, but the baseboard is cut where the door would have been. And if you knock along the walls, it sounds like it's made of thick plaster. But if you knock on the spot where room 873 should be, it sounds hollow. So it's believed that there is definitely a room 873 at the Banff Springs Hotel, and they boarded it up because it's literally haunted by the family that died in there. It's really freaky. I'm good with keeping that room sealed up forever, okay? In our second spot, we have the Axe Murder House, aka another place that you'll never catch me at, and another place plagued with paranormal activity and dark history. So on June 10th, 1912, husband and wife Josiah and Sarah Moore and their 3 sons and daughter were found bludgeoned to death inside of their home. The killer was never caught. After investigating the bodies and crime scene, it was concluded that the dark deed was done at around 12:45 midnight. They found 2 cigarettes in the attic, suggesting that the killer or killers were waiting in the attic until the family went to bed. They started in the master bedroom with the parents, struck them with an axe, and then moved on. Then they returned back to the master bedroom at the end to hit the 2 with more blows. And now it's said that this house and the rooms in it are extremely haunted. People that have gone on tours of the house have claimed to hear children's voices and screams. Others have seen objects move and fly on their own. But in 2014, something very scary and unexplainable happened. It happened to paranormal investigator Robert Stephen Larson Jr. He was touring the house. While staying at the house, he stabbed himself in the chest. The freakiest part? He got stabbed at 12:45 a.m. the same time the murders of the Moore family occurred. So yeah, maybe don't go exploring the rooms there unless you want something like that to happen to you. And in our number 1 spot today, we have room B340. Room B340 is a part of the Queen Mary, which is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in America. There are a number of ghosts that haunt this hotel, from Jackie, the little girl who haunts the first-class pool, to a man named John Petter who was crushed by a watertight door, to Second Senior Officer William Eric Stark who accidentally drank cleaning fluid instead of gin, and one of the cooks who was baked alive by his own staff during World War II. So yeah, a lot of dark things have happened on this ship turned hotel. Now there is one room on this ship that you never, and I mean never, want to go to, and that is room B340. It's the site of a huge tragedy. So back in the 60s, the ship was used for transatlantic cruises. Well, while on this cruise, a man went crazy and took the lives of 2 women in this room. When his crimes were discovered, he was locked in the room until they could dock the ship and deal with him. The door was locked from the outside and a guard was positioned outside the room so the killer couldn't escape. At one point, the guard heard the man pounding on the door saying that someone was in the room with him and was trying to kill him. Obviously the guard was like, I ain't no idiot, and never opened the door. He thought that this was the guy trying to get the guard to open the door so that he could escape. Here's where it gets weird, okay? Shortly after, the guard heard nothing coming from the room, so he thought, okay, the man finally settled down and went to bed. The next day, the ship arrived in New York and the NYPD boarded the ship to arrest the man. But when he opened the door, they found the man's body parts scattered across the room. His limbs had been ripped off and they were all over the place. There was no way he could have done this to himself. So what happened to him in there? Was there actually someone in that room with him? If so, how did they get in? And who is this person? It's just all so eerie, and that's why you should never board the ship, let alone go to this room. But if you want to, its ship welcomes paranormal investigators or anyone brave enough to spend the night there. A number of guests have reported eerie things happening to them in the middle of the night. In 1966, a woman was staying in the room and woke up to the covers on the bed being pulled off of her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a man standing at the end of her bed. She screamed and ran out of her room, but when she did, the man vanished into thin air. Other guests have complained about the lights in the room flickering on and off, or have heard sounds of someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Even the hotel maids have complained about the room, saying sometimes they have entered the room to find the water in the bathroom running, when no one was in the room for days.
Number 5 on this list is Panola Hall. Panola Hall is a beautiful Georgian home that is deeply haunted and also something that you could buy if your heart so desired. Rocket Homes says, Panola Hall was originally built for Henry Tripp in 1854, but its most popular resident is simply known as Sylvia. Said to be a young, beautiful, shy spirit, Sylvia typically appears on the stairwell with a rose in her hair and wearing a white hoop skirt dress. Her presence also brings about a strong smell of roses. The beautiful antebellum home is decorated with heart pine floors, 12-foot ceilings, a second-floor balcony, and a secret tunnel. At the time of writing, this home has a pending offer. Now, I looked into this home, guys, and apparently you can buy it for around $700,000, which, in all honesty, when looking at the property and everything that it has to offer, is a pretty good deal. Now, maybe they are factoring in the whole haunted by a spirit thing into the price, and that's dragging it down a little bit. Granted, this doesn't seem like the worst ghostly presence ever. Like, she smells like rose petals, so that's something that's pretty nice, and she's shy and pretty and probably pretty nice by the sounds of it. I do think that I would get triggered every time I smelled roses though. Like, think about if you were on the toilet and then you just got the sudden smell of roses. Now you know that Sylvia the ghost is watching you do your business, and I'm not sure if I would vibe with that so much. I don't know. This one is definitely a mixed bag for me. Sylvia seems nice, but I still think that I like my home ghost free if it's up to me. Number 4 on this list is the Pillars Estate. The Pillars Estate is a real blast from the past. Like, this home hasn't heard that we're in the year 2022 yet. Rocket Homes says, sometimes a homeowner loves their home so much they can find it difficult to leave even in the afterlife. Such is the case, many believe, for the Pillars Estate, an 1878 mansion in Albion, New York. The homeowner we're referring to is Myrtie Carr, who moved into the home with her husband William in the 1940s. It's said that Carr loved the home so much that she purportedly told one of her daughters that when she died she would never leave it. According to the current homeowner, Tony McMurdy, she's kept that promise. McMurdy, who has spent more than 10 years carefully restoring the home to its original splendor, has had his fair share of haunting experiences, including hearing doorknobs jiggling and seeing the apparition of a woman lying in bed. Despite the paranormal activity, it's believed that Carr's presence is warm and friendly, and that she's happy to see the care McMurdy has put into her beloved home. The Pillars Estate in Albion, New York is one of the oldest homes in the area. When you turn that antique key and step inside, you go back in history. The restored home is filled with antique furnishings, many of which are included in the sale of the home. McMurdy also added an extravagant ballroom featuring a grand staircase, dark wood features, chandeliers, and a bar. So not only has the home not recognized it's 2022, neither has Carr apparently. I personally have absolutely no interest in lying in bed and then being woken up by the feeling of a ghost lying right next to me. My bed is a sacred, ghost-free zone, and not even a cool 1850s house will make me give up on that. Number 3 on this list is the Boulder House. Ever wanted to get abducted by aliens? Well, now you can. Top 10 Real Estate Deals says, during the construction of their new home next to a mysterious pile of ancient rocks in Arizona, a young couple from Washington discovered that they weren't the first people to live in the boulders. Pottery shards and rock carvings were dated by experts back as far as 1,000 years. Then they found something even more astonishing, a Stonehenge-type phenomenon that occurs on both the spring and fall equinoxes. A 6-inch wide beam of light that starts in the glass between two boulders and slowly works its way across the floor and up the wall to a 36-inch spiral petroglyph. When the sun hits its mark, the stone projections light up like diamonds. What does it mean? Some people think it's a signal to space creatures, a light that will guide their spaceships to the Arizona desert. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything. Just a freak of nature. Whatever it might be, it started over 1,000 years ago when the Boulder people first began living here, about the same time that the hard-shelled life forms first showed up on Earth. A dream home for archaeologists, historians, artists, or mystery lovers, the Boulder House on 9 acres with 4,380 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a great room with a massive fireplace was recently for sale at $4.2 million. It is now off the market. So for the low price of $4.2 million, you can call some aliens over and hope that they come for dinner. Then after dessert, get jetted up to their ship where they will proceed to perform experiments on you. Yeah, that's a big no thank you from me. The home sounds cool as hell, just minus the literal extraterrestrial visitors. Number 2 on this list is the Linwood Hall. Linwood Hall is maybe the biggest haunted house in the world. Top 10 Real Estate Deals says proof that wealth does not bring happiness is shown by the tragedies experienced by the A.B. Widener family who built the 110-room Linwood Hall in Pennsylvania. Said to be the largest remaining example of neoclassical revival architecture from the Gilded Age, its decline began with links to the sinking of the Titanic. When Widener invested with J.P. Morgan in the White Star Line, little did he know that his son and grandson would die on the maiden voyage of its flagship, Titanic. Consumed with guilt and grief, A.B. Widener died in his grand mansion 3 years after the sinking. It is said that the 3 Widener ghosts are still its caretakers, and its legacy continues to be the world's biggest abandoned ghost house. Linwood Hall was listed at $20 million in 2014 and dropped to $16.5 million in 2015. It still hasn't sold. I mean, if these ghosts were actually going to be caretakers, that'd be pretty cool. From what I've heard though, they don't always just leave it at that. These ghosts, as with many paranormal entities, like to cause problems. For close to 20 mil, I want my home problem free. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Amityville Horror House. Now you guys probably know this home because it often makes all the lists associated with Ed and Lorraine Warren, but did you know that you could actually buy it? Well, in all honesty, you can't purchase it anymore because it's off the market, but a few years ago you could have. Top 10 Real Estate Deals says the New York home where Ronald Defoe got up in the middle of the night in 1974 and brutally murdered his parents and 4 siblings with a rifle while they slept. The home was occupied just a year later by the Lutz family until they were forced to leave because of the rampant paranormal activity. The storied horror house on the Ocean Avenue waterfront is today an extensively remodeled home. The 5,000 square foot home most recently sold in 2017 for just $605,000. This is one of the most haunted homes in the history of the planet, folks, and someone bought it. I'm surprised that it's even still standing, to be honest, and somebody hasn't completely demolished it since all the haunting reports came out. I don't even want to go into the same area as this home, let alone buy it and live in it. But if that's something that floats your boat, then apparently you could've.
In at number 5, the Sally House, Atchison, Kansas. Built in the mid-1800s in Atchison, Kansas, the Sally House is believed to be haunted by a little girl named Sally, who died in the home during an appendicitis surgery. However, it was in the mid-1990s that Sally's story began to receive both local and national attention, when the owners at the time, Tony and Deborah Pickman, began noticing strange occurrences in the home, including attacks on Tony, unexplained voices, and burnt finger marks. After investigations were conducted by the Kansas Paranormal Group, it was discovered that Sally wasn't the only ghost haunting the house, but there was also a middle-aged woman. However, one paranormal believer has an explanation for the second ghost. They believe that this is in fact Sally's mother, who died not long after Sally passed away. She had attacked the doctor and died, with the spirits remaining in the home. The mother is said to still be grieving the loss of her child, and is the one who is said to attack visitors. However, Sally is said to be a happy ghost and tries to play with children that move in the house. Other paranormal experiences in the house include pictures being turned upside down, floating objects, disembodied voices, apparitions, toys being thrown around, and doors opening, closing, locking, and unlocking. The house is now standing vacant with nobody wanting to live in the home. However, the house offers self-guided tours in September and October, as well as guided day tours and special overnight visits. In at number 4, the Myrtles Plantation, St. Francisville, Louisiana. The Myrtles Plantation is a historic home and former antebellum plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Built back in 1796 by General David Bradford, the plantation is reported to be one of America's most haunted homes. The plantation house is rumored to be on top of an ancient Indian burial ground, with it currently being a bed and breakfast and offering historical and mystery tours for ghost hunters. The plantation is said to be home to at least 12 different different ghosts, with it often being reported that 10 murders occurred in the home. However, historical records only indicate the murder of William Winter. William Drew Winter was an attorney who lived in the plantation from 1865 until 1871, until he was shot by a stranger. After being shot, it is said that he staggered inside the house and died trying to climb the stairs. He died on the 17th step, and to this day, visitors as well as employees still hear his dying footsteps. Jumping ahead to 2002, Unsolved Mysteries filmed a segment at the plantation, and according to host Robert Stack, the production crew experienced technical difficulties during the production. It was also featured on the TV series Ghost Adventures, as well as on the series Most Terrifying Places in America.
Number 3 on this list is the Wyckoff Villa. The haunting for the Wyckoff Villa is kind of up in the air right now as to if it's even haunted in the first place. I'll tell you guys the history of this and then let you guys be the judge. Rocket Home says the Cape Vincent, New York home was built as a summer estate for William Wyckoff of Remington typewriter fame. Unfortunately, Wyckoff died of a heart attack the first night he spent in the home. The villa then went to his son, who sold it to General Electric after the family lost its fortune during the Great Depression. However, the company abandoned the home during World War II and it has sat vacant ever since, more than 70 years. A ghost of its former self, the once ornate home has been stripped of its doors, windows, stained glass, and marble features. But even as a shell of a mansion, the Wyckoff Villa is stunning. Its new owner, whoever that may be, will need to commit to a true labor of love, as this home will require a complete rebuild. The property shows promise, though, as it includes close to 7 acres of land and 3 waterfronts. So this home has definitely seen its fair share of stuff over the years. We got depression, war, a bunch of stuff that could easily have left a spirit behind. Not to mention the place was abandoned for decades, and who knows what sinister things happened during that period of time. Because it was abandoned for so long, there aren't too many paranormal stories, but locals still think something is off about this place. If you want to find out for yourself, well, you're free to buy the place. Number 2 on this list is the Yulee home. So many of these places are haunted by their original owners, and this one is no different. Rocket Home says, built in 1890, the Yulee home still has many of its original features, including its Yulee bricks. The brickwork original owner Stefan Yulee was known for around Silver City, New Mexico, where the home is located. Stefan and his wife Susanna were pioneers and 2 of the first settlers in the area, which served as a tent city during the mining boom. It's believed that Stefan and Susanna still haunt the property today. The Victorian home requires some renovation work, but has a number of great features, including a balcony, basement, and 1-bedroom apartment attached by a breezeway. So if you buy this house, you get to experience the ghosts of 2 pioneers. Just absolutely swell. It's said that these 2 spirits will often cause tons of problems at the home in an attempt to get rid of you from it. So even though you may buy this home and it's good to go, within a few months you'll have renovated it tons of times over because these spirits keep messing it up. Just on a pure investment stance alone, it doesn't seem like the best idea to buy this one. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Lake Forest Schwepp Mansion. A Lake Forest mansion. This place is just made to be the setting for a horror movie. Rocket Home says, built in 1917 in Lake Forest, Illinois, the mansion was a wedding gift from John Shedd to his daughter Laura and his new son-in-law Charles Schwepp. The stunning property had 27 rooms, ornate chandeliers, and carved wooden paneling. It was so exquisite that the Schwepps entertained royalty on more than one occasion while living in the home. Unfortunately, Laura passed away in 1937, and 4 years later, Charles committed suicide in the home and left an ominous note that read, "I've been awake all night, it's terrible." After his death, the home sat vacant for 46 years until Donna Denton and her then husband purchased it. They were the only people to own the Lake Forest Schwepp Mansion and once joked that the home was big enough to share with any spirits who lived there. Good thing, because the mansion was said to be haunted by Charles, Laura, and several servants who lived in the home. Jeez. Well, now I'm gonna be up all night as well, Charles, because your spirit isn't gonna let me fall asleep. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this show before, but there's a comedy show out there right now called Ghosts. I haven't watched it personally, but just based on the commercials, these are the vibes that I get. Now, from my understanding, the ghosts in the show are supposed to be fun and silly, and these ones in real life aren't that way inclined. But maybe whoever owns this house should just play that sitcom on repeat and hope that the real life ghosts get the idea. I don't know, it's worth a shot.
Coming in at number 5, we have the ghost of Anna Surratt. Now, as we will go on to talk about later, John Wilkes Booth was the man responsible for assassinating Abraham Lincoln. However, his name wasn't the only one connected to the assassination. John Wilkes Booth had an entire gang. One of the sadder names connected to the assassination is that of Anna Surratt. Anna is remembered chiefly for her heartbreaking and unsuccessful efforts to save her mother Mary from being hanged by the US government as a member of the John Wilkes Booth gang. Anna spent 24 hours trying to save her mother's life, visiting the White House twice in an effort to get President Johnson to halt the execution. Mary Surratt was ultimately executed. However, history wasn't quite done with Anna yet. She reappeared in the public eye and even became an issue in the 1880 presidential election. By the time Anna died on October 24, 1904, public opinion largely regarded Mary Surratt as the innocent victim of prosecutorial zeal, and Anna was remembered, in the words of the Baltimore American, for her utmost devotion and self-sacrifice in the closing hours of Mr. Surratt's life. Now, many of the more recent residents of the White House have sworn the ghost of Anna Surratt haunt the grounds, with many hearing knocks on the front doors pleading for the release of her mother, Mary Surratt. Coming in at number 4, we have the ghost of David Burns. Jared Broach is the founder of the Nightly Spirits Company, which offers tours of haunted areas in several cities across the United States. However, when Broach started the tours back in 2012, he offered only one: the White House. I quote, "The White House has the best ghost stories, and I'd call them the most verified. Honestly, we could do a 10-hour tour if we really wanted to." Now, his favourite story is that of David Burns, who sold the land where the White House sits, and whose voice has been heard in the Oval Office countless times. David Burns was said to be an argumentative, controversial Scotsman, who despite his great wealth never got rid of his original home, which was a humble cottage overlooking Constitution Avenue. When David Burns died, he left his daughter his entire and very substantial estate, telling her from his deathbed, "Marcia, you've been a good daughter. You'll now be the richest girl in America." She was said to be the richest woman in America at the time. Now, like I said, since his death, Burns' ghost has been seen in the Oval Office, where a reporter told a security guard during the Truman administration that, while standing in the yellow Oval Room, he heard a whisper which said, "I'm Mr. Burns." In at number 3, House of Death, New York. On 14th West 10th Street in Greenwich Village in New York stands a picturesque home, which is now known as the House of Death, with it having a less than cute history. Since its construction back in the 1850s near the start of the Civil War, 22 people have reported to have died in the home, and according to the New York Post, some of their spirits have never left. Some residents over the years have reported sightings of Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, who lived in the building between 1900 and 1901. Sightings of the author have been reported on the first floor of the home near the staircase, with him said to be wearing a white suit. Allegedly, the spirit stated, "My name is Clemens and I has a problem here I gotta settle." A few years later, after the sighting, the house was converted into a 10-unit apartment building. However, the hauntings did not cease. According to the New York Post, actress Jan Bryant Bartell and her husband moved into the apartment on the top floor in 1957 and immediately felt a monstrous moving shadow that loomed up behind her. After she left the home, she published a memoir where she wrote about feeling a brush against the back of her neck and smelling a rotting odor throughout the apartment. She went on to state that on one particular occasion she saw a vision of a man and she reached out to him. She stated that she touched a substance without substance, chilly damp, diaphanous as March mist or a cloud of ether. Coming in at number 2, Lalaurie Mansion, New Orleans, Louisiana. Located on 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans is the Lalaurie Mansion, a home which was reported to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Some may also be familiar with this house as it was depicted on American Horror Story Coven. Now, this home is where slaves were tortured at the hands of Delphine Lalaurie. Born Marie Delphine McCarty, but more commonly known as Madame Lalaurie, she was a New Orleans socialite and serial killer who, like I said, tortured and murdered slaves in her home. Accounts of Lalaurie's treatments of slaves between the years of 1831 to 1834 are mixed. However, Harriet Martineau, writing in 1838, claimed that enslaved people kept by Lalaurie were observed to be singularly haggard and wretched. However, in public appearances, Lalaurie was seen to be generally polite to them. Now, everything changed when a fire broke out in the home on April 10, 1834, which began in the kitchen. When the police were called and the fire marshals arrived, they found the cook chained to the stove by her ankle, with her later stating that she had started the fire as an attempt to end her life. As reported in the New Orleans Bee of April 11, 1834, bystanders responding to the fire attempted to enter the quarters of the enslaved people to ensure that everyone had been evacuated. Upon being refused the keys by the Lalauries, the bystanders broke down the doors to the quarters and found, I quote, 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by their neck with their limbs apparently stretched. When the discovery was made and the news broke out, a mob of local citizens attacked the Lalauries' residence and demolished and destroyed everything upon which they could lay their hands. Now, the original mansion occupied by Lalaurie did not survive, with the mansion on the corner of Royal Street, which is commonly referred to as the Lalaurie Mansion, not being the same building inhabited by Lalaurie. Despite that, many believe that the ground itself is still haunted. And finally, coming in at number 1, Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, Massachusetts. First and foremost, Lizzie Borden was an American woman who was the primary suspect in the 1892 axe murders which took place at the home in Fall River, Massachusetts. The victims were Lizzie's father and her stepmother, with her being ultimately acquitted of the murders. Now, this case received a huge amount of attention across the United States, and following her release from jail where she had been held during the trial, Lizzie opted to remain in the same area where the deaths occurred, despite facing ostracism from other residents. Lizzie ultimately spent the remainder of her life in Fall River before passing away of pneumonia at the age of 66. The Lizzie Borden house is of course the home where the Borden family lived, with it being located on 230 2nd Street in the city of Fall River. From 1874 to 1892, the house was the property of Andrew Borden, Lizzie's father, who was a member of Fall River High Society. After Lizzie's trial and ultimate acquittal, she bought another home located on 7 French Street that she named Maplecroft. This is where she remained until her death. Now, as of today, the Borden house operates as a bed and breakfast, and it has been doing so since 1996. It is currently owned by Martha McGinn, whose grandparents purchased the home back in 1948. According to Martha, the room where Lizzie's stepmother was found murdered is the most requested room of the bedrooms at the B&B, which is incredibly sick and twisted.
Coming at number 5, we've got Lalaurie Mansion. Few houses have the history and horror stories to match this New Orleans landmark. Over the years, many tales of terror have been attached to it, all with colorful characters and public intrigue at the center. If you do end up visiting New Orleans, make sure you're on the lookout when you're close to the Lalaurie Mansion. Some folks claim that just being outside of the building can cause folks to feel intense negative energy. Let's delve into the details a little, why don't we? Anyone who's interested in New Orleans ghost stories undoubtedly knows about this mansion. Some forego the proper title and simply call it the Ghost House, which is a pretty apt descriptor. Since the 19th century, paranormal happenings have been reported stemming from the home. A lot of these rumors can be traced back to Delphine Lalaurie, a woman who married thrice and lost her husband each time. In addition to her questionable track record with marriage, Delphine Lalaurie also had slaves living on the property. Though common at the time, people looked at her a little differently for this, especially as it was said that she did not treat these people very well at all. In fact, a lot of the ghosts folks claim to see there are often traced back to the slaves that she kept. Some say that a young girl leapt from an upstairs window of the mansion, unwilling to continue living under the strict and cruel rule of Madame Lalaurie. Others say that the slaves there would disappear from time to time, only to be replaced a little bit down the road. The scariest story though comes from the time that the mansion almost burned down. After a fire swept through the house, it was revealed that a group of slaves had been kept locked away in a hidden room, chained to the walls, totally emaciated. To make matters worse, rumors started to spread that Lalaurie had performed horrifying experiments on them. From then on, Madame Lalaurie was seen as a villain, a criminal, a mad scientist. And while none of these experiments have been properly confirmed, their influence still remains to this day. There's some scary history attached to this house, and many people still claim to see the ghosts of people who once lived there roaming about after dark. Coming in at number 4, we've got Craig the Rock Mansion. Sticking with the haunted mansion theme for a little while, this little Canadian gem is packed to the gills with ghost stories. Any sort of old-fashioned mansion is probably subject to similar scrutiny, but this one in particular seems to capture the attention of many. This mansion was being built for Robert Dunsmuir, a rich coal baron who wanted a luxurious home. Unfortunately, he never did get to live as lavishly as he would have liked, as he passed away a year before it was completed. Could it be that his restless soul refused to pass on without getting his money's worth? Is he the ghost swooping through the ornate hallways? Well, that could be the answer, or at least part of it. Craig the Rock Mansion doesn't just get its reputation from one singular ghost. There are many that call these dusty rooms home. In fact, one more important figure in the house's completion perished before it was ready for living. The chief architect of the mansion didn't quite make it to the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Tragic and a little ironic. So that's 2 down that poured themselves into this home and never got to see it at its finest. The entire Dunsmuir clan seems to have a haunted stake here, as explorers have come across many other family members during their time in the mansion. Joan Dunsmuir has been seen walking through the halls in a ball gown, and a young girl has been spotted in the basement, supposedly their daughter. Her cries can be heard throughout the mansion, which is definitely unsettling. The last thing I'll mention about this one is the piano. It's a lovely old thing and still sounds pretty good. However, no matter how good a piano sounds, nobody wants to hear it playing when the room is totally empty. This keyboard is known to be used in some phantom performances, spooking even the most devout music fans out there. I wonder if the ghost takes requests.
Coming in at number 3, Jenna Bush Hager's ghostly experience. Now, as it has become clear already, the White House has certainly seen its share of ghosts. However, Jenna Bush Hager has one of the more creepy stories to come from the presidential home. In a conversation with Hoda, Jenna recalled the time she and her twin sister Barbara Bush may have encountered the undead while living in the White House during their dad's time as president, aka George W. Bush, who was the 43rd president of the United States, who ran from 2001 to 2009. According to Jenna, the sisters were in their shared bedroom when Jenna's phone rang. I quote, "It woke us up in the middle of the night. We had a fireplace in our room, and all of a sudden we started hearing 1920s piano music as clear as day coming out of the fireplace." According to Jenna, it was incredibly spooky and she jumped in her sister's bed. To make things more terrifying, it wasn't a one-time thing. I quote, "The next week we had the same thing, but this time opera." She also recalled telling one of the White House staffers about her experience, who apparently promptly responded with, "Oh Jenna, you wouldn't believe what I've heard." Coming in at number 2, President Harry S. Truman's ghostly surprise. Harry S. Truman was the 33rd President of the United States, serving from 1945 to 1953, succeeding upon the death of Franklin D. Roosevelt after serving as Vice President. During his term, he implemented the Marshall Plan to rebuild the economy of Western Europe and establish the Truman Doctrine and NATO. However, we're not talking about him as a president, we're discussing his ghostly encounter in the White House during his presidency. On one lonely night in 1946, it is said that President Harry S. Truman went to bed around 9 p.m. However, about 6 hours later, he heard something at his door. A knock, knock, knock. The banging awoke him. He wrote to his wife in a letter that is archived in the Presidential Library and Museum. I quote, "I jumped up and put on my bathrobe. I opened the door and no one was there. Went out, looked up and down the hall, looked in your room and Margie's. Still no one. Went back to bed after locking the doors and there were footsteps in your room whose door I'd left open. Jumped and looked, and no one was there. The damn place is haunted, sure as shooting. The Secret Service said not even a watchman was up here at the hour. You and Margie had better come back and protect me before some of these ghosts carry me off." And finally, coming in at number 1, Abraham Lincoln. As most of you will know, or at least should know, Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States from 1861 to 1865. He led the nation through its greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis in the American Civil War, but more notably, he abolished slavery and modernized the US economy. However, on April 14, 1865, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theatre with his wife. Booth entered the back of Lincoln's theatre box, crept up from behind, and fired at the back of Lincoln's head, mortally wounding him. After remaining in a coma for 8 hours, Lincoln passed away on April 15th. Now, as you might expect, there have been several stories about ghosts of former presidents haunting the White House, but perhaps the most common and popular is that of Lincoln. Lincoln's ghost, otherwise known as the White House ghost, is said to have haunted the White House since his death in 1865. Lincoln's ghost is also said to haunt many of his former residences in Springfield, Illinois, including his former law office. Theodore Roosevelt and Maureen Reagan and her husband have all claimed to have seen a spectral Lincoln in the White House, and on one occasion, Roosevelt's personal valet ran screaming from the White House claiming he had seen Lincoln's ghost. However, arguably the most famous incident was in 1942 when Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands allegedly heard footsteps outside the White House bedroom and answered a knock on the door, only to see Lincoln in a frock coat and a top hat standing in front of her. She promptly fainted. However, one of the more famous stories came from none other than British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. He loved to retire late, take a long hot bath while drinking a scotch and smoke a cigar and relax. However, on one occasion he climbed out of the bath and was startled to see Lincoln standing by the fireplace in his room, leaning on the mantel. Churchill promptly stated, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." According to the former Prime Minister, Lincoln smiled softly and then disappeared.
Coming in number 5, we've got the Los Feliz Murder Mansion. Also a great name for an instrumental math rock band or maybe a spooky improv group. Feel free to use it as long as you invite me to the first show. The Los Feliz Murder Mansion is exactly what it sounds like. A mansion in Los Feliz where somebody was murdered. It goes further than that, as the circumstances surrounding the murder are quite grisly indeed. In the late 50s, this house belonged to Dr. Harold Perelson, a family man with a successful career. Those last 2 bits were just for show though, as there was plenty of darkness hidden beneath the veneer of respectability. On one fateful night, he decided enough was enough and found his trusty hammer. Using this carpentry tool as an improvised weapon, he ended the life of his wife in brutal fashion. One attack wasn't enough either, as Dr. Perelson went after his daughter as well. Thankfully, he wasn't able to finish her off, but she was still gravely injured. Realizing what he had done, he decided to drink enough acid to burn through his insides and send him on to the afterlife. Chilling, to say the least. What would drive a person to commit such an act? After this all became public knowledge, people avoided the home for a while. The place where something so horrid happened can't be comfortable to sit around in. However, after a while, a family bought up the property and used it largely for storage. That's probably a safer bet than actually living there, eh? In 2016, the place was cleared out and most of the remaining stuff was auctioned off. Then it sold in 2019 and someone new moved in. Maybe time did a nice revision and people forgot what had happened there. Although it doesn't seem as though the ghosts are very violent or surly. No, the hauntings here largely consist of things being moved around without anyone present. And speaking of present, there have also been reports of unexplainable Christmas gifts appearing around the house. Maybe these ghosts feel bad for how things went down and have decided to live a lovely family life once more. Interesting. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Marr residence. The older a building is, the more likely it is to be haunted, yeah? Can we accept that as a fact of life? Good, good. So it should stand to reason that the Marr residence, located in Saskatoon, is probably bursting at the seams with phantoms. This house was actually built way before the city even incorporated and is the longest standing building in the area. Of course it would accumulate some ghosts over the years. The main way folks might have ended up tethered to this home in the afterlife is through its use as a field hospital in 1885. Hospitals often find themselves creating many ghosts, as folks who suffer for extended periods of time or go before they're ready tend to stick around afterwards. The Marr residence also has a long history of different folks deciding to live there for a while, so any number of tenants may be haunting the halls. One ghost in particular causes a whole lot of issues. Appearing as an elderly, angry man, the phantom flies around, tormenting any women who enter the house. Some things never change, eh? No matter what era you pull an angry dude from, he'll always find a way to harass some woman he doesn't know. Classic. So if you're really freaked out, don't worry. The Marr residence actually offers a virtual tour on the website, meaning you can shuffle around this creaky home without having to put yourself in the way of any spectral presences. They've also made an attempt to connect with all the cool youths out there by starting up a TikTok account. I can't vouch for its efficacy, but at least they're trying. Ghost stories in real life just don't have the same pull as online ones anymore. Interestingly enough, it seems to be a popular destination for weddings too, so if you really want, you can book your next event at the Marr residence. There might be more than one lady in white though, and nobody can really get mad at ghosts for upstaging a bride. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Lizzie Borden house, a classic tale of axe murders and acquittals. This is a story that has remained famous for years and even now gets a fair deal of attention. Lizzie Borden was accused of murdering her parents with an axe way back in the late 19th century. Plenty was said and in-depth investigations were performed, but Lizzie got off scot-free. Well, actually, her neighbors never seemed to believe that she was innocent, but Lizzie faced no legal repercussions for this event. However, the house in which it happened is said to house both the spirits of Lizzie and her victims. After dying at the age of 66, Lizzie apparently returned home. People who visit the house have told stories about seeing the ghosts of her headless victims wandering about the house, along with a panicked maid who discovered the bodies. Lizzie's around too, although she makes herself known with a laugh. It's said that she laughed while killing her parents and laughed when she got away with it, so it makes sense that she'd still be chuckling in the afterlife. Do you think all the ghosts get along at this point? Or is it an eternity of enmity? I suppose you'll have to visit to find out. Coming in number 2, we've got the Sally House. To preface this, I want to let you know that the Sally House is bookable. You can pay something like $150 to spend a night in one of the most haunted houses in America. Pretty good deal, right? Sure, you can't cook, and the basement's off limits, and nobody's allowed to sleep in the beds, but come on! Where else can you get an opportunity like this? The Sally House got its haunted start thanks to a botched appendectomy. At the time, a doctor lived there and ran his practice out of the house. One day, a woman came in with a very ill child. child. The doctor deduced that the kid needed their appendix removed before it burst. However, it was already set to blow and there was no time to waste. So they attempted to sedate the girl but couldn't wait any longer for the effects to kick in. They began the surgery before the kid was properly sedated and she could feel everything. Her screams echoed throughout the house but nothing could be done. In the end, the surgery was a failure and the doctor was crestfallen. His patient, unable to really understand what was going on, had passed away under the knife, believing the doctor to be torturing her. Since then, her angry spirit has haunted the home, tossing objects around, whispering and scratching in the night, and shoving male guests whenever they arrive. And finally, at number 1, we've got the White House. There are so many reasons to avoid the White House wholesale. By taking up residence there, you're just asking for trouble. But beyond the 24-hour news cycle and the ever-present online scrutiny, there are plenty more classical paranormal reasons to leave the White House well alone. Throughout American history, different presidents who have lived in the White House have reported strange happenings. Sometimes there might be a knock at one's bedroom door with no one on the other side. Others claim to have seen previous politicians and aides floating down the halls at night. Abraham Lincoln was regularly visited by his late son, and after he was assassinated, he seemed to return to the White House in similar fashion. With all of the important figures that have visited this location over the years and all of the high-stakes events connected with the structure, there's no doubt that the White House is haunted in one way or another. So try to avoid accepting any dinner invites unless you want to be haunted or sniffed.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Lizzie Borden house in Massachusetts. Lizzie Borden was an American woman who became the center of a sensational trial in the United States. In 1892, she was accused of killing her father and stepmother. Her family was well off and lived in the town of Fall River in Massachusetts. Her father had remarried 3 years after Lizzie's mother had died. Lizzie also had an older sister, Emma. They often argued with their father regarding their finances and their stepmother. Lizzie was well liked in the community and spent her days involved with various charity work. Her father was not well liked though. He was known to be stubborn and cruel. On the morning of August 4th, 1892, Mr. Borden left his home for work. Left in the house was Lizzie, the stepmother, and a live-in mate. Her sister was out of town at the time. When he returned from work, it was reported that he sat down in the living room and had a nap. No one knows exactly what happened to Mr. and Mrs. Borden next, but Lizzie gave her version of events. Lizzie claims to have returned home at around 11:15. Upon her return, she found her father brutally attacked on the sofa. Upstairs, his wife's body was found mutilated. It was later confirmed she had died around an hour before her husband. There was little evidence to what had actually happened to the Bordens. Lizzie had suspicious activity that made it seem likely that she was involved. On August 3rd, Lizzie had purchased some poisonous acid. It was also found that she had burned some of her clothing on the stove, and in the days following the murder, the maid was also suspected of the killing. She was seen leaving the home carrying an unexamined parcel in the evening following the murder. No weapon was ever found, though they did suspect the axe that was found in the basement. Lizzie was arrested and tried but was acquitted due to the lack of evidence. It was widely believed she was guilty. She was shunned by her community. She would stay in the family home until she died of old age in 1927. The house is reportedly haunted by both Lizzie's spirit and Mr. and Mrs. Borden. Coming in at number 4, we have Merchant House Museum in New York. The Merchant House is the only 19th century family home that has been preserved. The house was built in 1832 by a wealthy merchant. The merchant Seabury Treadwell raised his family in the home. He had 8 children. The home was never empty as the family constantly grew, with 4 servants, nieces, nephews, cousins, and aunts all staying at the home from time to time. Most of the family lived there until their old age. The youngest daughter, Gertrude, lived there alone for 24 years after the death of her older sister. She was eccentric and became obsessed with holding on to the family home in its original state. The neighborhood around her home was run down. Many of the homes around it were demolished. As you can see today, the home stands alone in its elegance. After she died in 1933, a distant cousin purchased the house to ensure it was not demolished. He turned the home into a museum, a time capsule of what it was like to live in the 19th century. Still has the original possessions from the family. Not everything in the home was idyllic. There are some ghosts that linger in the home, other than those of the family members who refused to leave even in death. There is a famous story, the thief who tried to steal from the family. It was said he broke in one night while the family slept. He stole a lot of jewels and valuables from the home. He was attempting to make his escape through a hole he had made in one of the weaker walls. As he squeezed through the hole, the wall collapsed on top of him. He did not survive. He was found by the family in the morning. The thief's brother apparently demanded justice. He claimed that the wall should not have been made so poorly. It was the bad quality of the wall that killed his brother. Obviously, this was not seen as a valid concern. The thief's ghost is reported to still be lingering in the home. Luckily, the house is now a museum and not a hotel, so you shouldn't have too much trouble with the ghosts. There have been various sightings. Someone saw one of the daughter sat in the garden as they walked towards the girl, she disappeared. A man covered in a dust like soot had been seen around the kitchen, believed to be the thief. Many guests feel cold spots around the house. At least the majority of the ghosts are friendly. The Treadwell family are just enjoying their beloved home.
Coming in at number 3, we've got the Morgan House. Another tale of familial terror. This house is situated in Kalimpong, India. A husband-wife duo moved in, sharing the last name Morgan. Of course, that's where this house got its famous name. At first, all seemed well with this young couple. They kept up appearances, went about their daily chores, and ensured that all looked well. However, they were hiding a dark secret. Mr. Morgan supposedly tortured his wife behind closed doors, beating her and performing terrible acts. She had no way to leave him, so all she could do was endure. As time went on, the torture got worse, and Miss Morgan was desperate for a way out. She stopped seeing friends, ceased leaving the house, and eventually became a total shut-in. And after all that, it was too much. She took her own life, leaving Mr. Morgan to abandon the property. For decades, the house was left in this state, empty, dusty, and home to a ghost. But eventually, the Indian government stepped in and revitalized the structure, making it into a boutique hotel. The ghost story doesn't end there though. Guests at this hotel often hear the clicking of high heels and the sobbing of a woman in distress. Those who know the story of the Morgans understand that this is a sign that Miss Morgan is near, even all these years later. Coming in at number 2, we've got Casa de la Poesia, or the House of Poetry. That doesn't sound too spooky, but poets tend to be pretty morbid, don't you think? Once belonging to Colombian poet Jose Asuncion Silva, this was a place of tragedy. Silva lived a life largely void of pleasure or triumph. Although he did publish some wildly influential and successful poetry, a lot of what happened in his life surrounding his writing was very sad. His only friend, his sister, died too young, leaving him all alone. His best manuscripts were lost in a shipwreck, and his family fell upon hard times, resulting in economic ruin. Needless to say, this lonely poet wasn't a very happy individual. Eventually, after putting out enough work to support himself for a few years, Silva took his own life at the age of 30. After this, people began to hear whispers and shuffling from within the house, likely thanks to the ghost of Silva, a moody poet even in the afterlife. These days, the house is a museum. Guests come here for the poetry and the poltergeistery. And finally, at number 1, we've got the Villisca Axe Murder House. Now, most of the houses on this list are well known for having a spooky atmosphere and trying to make people afraid simply through backstories. However, visitors are often pleasantly surprised by how little harm they do. Ghosts have a tough time actually hurting folks after all. The Villisca Axe Murder House has spooky legends and horrifying repercussions in spades. Made famous for a gruesome string of murders back in the early 20th century, folks have always been a little afraid of this shack. No running water, no power, no hope. After the young family was famously murdered and no explanation was discovered, rumors of ghosts and ghouls proliferated. Even today, most paranormal enthusiasts don't seem to want to actually spend a night. In fact, one investigator did in 2014 and did his best to find out what he could. In the end, he only ended up with a self-inflicted stab wound. So be careful when dealing with this fascinating old home. Who knows what you might see, hear, or think. Who wants to put in an offer on one of these? With prices the way they are lately, it might be your last chance to be a homeowner before the fall of the empire. Roommates are almost a given these days, why not opt for a phantom roommate? They'll leave less dishes in the sink.
In at number 5, we have the Franklin Castle in Ohio. The high Victorian home has been a fixture of the city's west side for over 100 years. It was built in the 1880s by grocer turned banker Hans Tiedemann. Although his wealth was significant, Tiedemann's life was filled with tragedy. A distressing number of his immediate family members would die in this house. The story goes that the construction of the castle's elaborate turrets, prominent gargoyles, and increasingly large network of rooms were an attempt to distract his wife from the ceaseless amount of death. That is, until she too suddenly passed away. After Tiedemann sold the property, it spent several decades as a German cultural center. The tales of hauntings picked up in the 1960s, as reports of surging electricity, the sound of babies crying, and a mysterious woman in black gained steam. Human bones were found in a closet in 1975. It was never confirmed who the remains belonged to, but with the number of deaths within the home, it is believed to be one of the Tiedemann's family. As the years have gone by, tales of Franklin Castle have grown, and now include an axe murder, a mass shooting of in the basement, and the alleged hanging death of Tiedemann's illegitimate daughter. Many stories focus on heinous acts that supposedly took place in tunnels below the house. After a fire, the home laid abandoned for several years before the current owners purchased the place in 2011. In at number 4, we have the Sally House in Kansas. If you're into ghost hunting shows, you probably already know this famous haunted house. The unassuming home in Kansas is rumored to be the dark lair for a demon who takes on the form of a little girl because of a family's bizarre experiences there. Built in the mid-1800s in the growing community of Atchison, 2nd Street has seen its fair share of owners through the years, including the family of a 6-year-old girl named Sally, who died in the home during a botched appendicitis surgery. It wasn't until the mid-1990s when Sally's story first gained both local and national attention, when then owners Tony and Deborah Pickman lived in the home and began noticing strange occurrences, including attacks on Tony, unexplained voices, and apparent burnt finger marks upon mysteriously burning candles. Sally isn't some harmless ghost. Theories around her malevolent presence in the house, as well as some evidence of satanic rituals in the basement, suggest that Sally is in fact a demon disguised as a young girl. It is believed that the family was desperate in their grief and decided to perform the ritual in an attempt to bring back their daughter. Instead, they invited a demon into the home and offered them her body as a vessel. Since then, the demon has terrorized the home. Paranormal investigators have confirmed the house is haunted, but none have so far been able to cast out the demon. The Sally house is open to the public if this sounds like the holiday location for you. Coming in at number 3, we have Villa de Vici in Italy. The Villa de Vici in Italy was built around 1854. It has the nickname the House of Witches. The house was riddled with tragedies from day one. Count Felix de Vici was head of the Italian National Guard. He was considered a decorated hero. He wanted to build a dream home for him and his family. He recruited architect Alessandro Sidoli. It took around 3 years to build the home. Alessandro died a year before the villa was completed. This would come to be seen as the first bad omen. Of course, at the time, it was simply an unfortunate event. Once finished, the home was a great mansion. It was outfitted with all the modern conveniences of the time, including indoor heating. No expense was spared. The home had extensive gardens and promenades. Unfortunately, the family would not be able to enjoy their lives in the idyllic home. Sometime in 1862, the Count returned home from a day's work. He found his wife had been brutally attacked. It was too late to save her. More than that, his daughter had been taken. He had started a lengthy search for his daughter, using his best men to search as far as they were able. The daughter was never found. Later that same year, the staff found the Count in his study. He had taken his own life from the guilt of losing his family. The villa was passed from owner to owner for a few years. By the year 1960, the home would be left permanently uninhabited. The house fell into ruin. The walls have fallen and vandals have destroyed much of the interior. There are now rumors that occultists use the home for rituals. The home is said to be strongly connected to spirits and ghosts. Many entities have been spotted here. If you were to visit the home, you'd be able to sense those who have passed, along with the other spirits who have been called on by rituals. Coming in at number 2, we have Los Feliz Mansion in Los Angeles. Very little is known about the Los Feliz Mansion before it was bought by cardiologist Harold Perelson for his family. The family seemed to live there happily until 1959. Harold lived in the home with his wife and 3 children, the oldest named Judy. It was reported that Perelson was in a financial crisis. He had sunk thousands into a medical device he had invented only to have it stolen by a colleague. Things went from bad to tragic for the family on December 6, 1959. It's reported that Harold lost his mind. He woke at around 4:30 a.m. He took a hammer to his wife. He then went to his daughter's room. He tried to do the same thing to Judy, but failed. She managed to escape screaming. She ran to the neighbors where she could call the police. The 2 younger children woke up during the screaming. Harold told them to go back to sleep and that they were having a nightmare. Harold then went back to his study. He took 2 doses of something and 31 pills before lying down. He had passed by the time the police and ambulance arrived on the scene. The house has sat untouched since this happened. The house was purchased by a family, but they chose to leave everything in the house as they found it. They never spent a single night in the home, but came and went with storage. It is rumored that if you go to visit the house, you can still see the Christmas tree in the living room, surrounded by the presents neatly wrapped, as well as a Life magazine on the coffee table along with other signs of the time. And finally, in at number 1, we have Louis Family Mansion in Taiwan. The Louis Family Mansion, or more commonly known as Mingsong Ghost House, is one of the most haunted locations in Taiwan. The house, built in 1929, is situated in the countryside near Chiayi. The home was once a beautiful 3-story, perfect for any family. Looking at the home today, you can see the old charm, but the house is overgrown and a tapestry of trees that have claimed it over time. Louis Rongyu, an affluent merchant and landowner, bought the house for his family. It was rumored that he had started an affair with the maid. This affair went on for years without anyone knowing anything of it. Finally, the maid got tired of being a secret and confronted his wife. Louis Rongyu broke off the affair, choosing his family. The maid was reportedly distraught about what had happened. She jumped from the 2nd-story balcony into the well below. Some say another family member might have pushed her to save them the public embarrassment. After this, the ghost of the maid haunted the the family every night, terrorizing them. She would not let them rest. It was not long before the family felt they had to move out, leaving their home behind. They never sold the property, it was simply left to rot. Perhaps they did not want anyone else to be terrorized by the angry spirit they had created. Dark tourists continued to visit the house. There have been various sightings of the ghost since then. People are warned not to spend the night, as this is when she looks for vengeance. Would you risk it? I certainly